When the Spanish got here in 1492, and you know, they are on the island from 1492 to 1625, the Spanish is looking for gold. They're looking for wealth, and this is the first thing they started doing. And they find some gold. Haiti still produces gold today. And so gold was the big prize that everybody's looking for. But once they get into sugarcane was sweet gold. I mean, sugarcane was it.
During the period where they were commencing this genocide against the indigenous population, a priest called Bartholomew de las Casas came up with this idea that it was ungodly to do what they were doing to the indigenous people of Hispaniola. They were killing them off. It was terrible, which it was, incredibly brutal. So they needed someone else to do it to. And this was where he came up with the idea of getting people from elsewhere.
This revolution was going on from the moment Africans touched the shores. That's very important to understand, because what also happened is that when Africans were brought to this island, many of the warriors from the Congo, from Yoruba, or what we call Nigeria, or from Ghana, when they were brought here, the Ashanti, they immediately escaped and created maroon towns. These maroon towns would later become the actual hubs of the revolutions, because many of them never really experienced being enslaved. The great majority of sugar that was consumed in Europe came from that part of the world, came from that island. The coffee that went to Europe came from that island.
That colony that the Spanish founded, taken by the French, eventually became the most profitable colony in the Americas, and arguably, depending on which economist you consult, the most profitable colony in the world at the time. It became the centerpiece of the transatlantic slave system. It became what gave France its supremacy over Britain in the 18th century. I mean, this island, it's impossible to overstate the economic importance of the island in the period we're talking about. It produced more profit than all of North America combined.
This was a wealth that was largely borne by sugar, which was not only an item used to sweeten your tea and coffee, but it was also a marker of class. It was seen as a sign of sophistication when one used sugar. And in certain circles, it was even seen as a miracle drug of some sorts. And that helped to generate tremendous amounts of wealth on the island of Hispaniola, which is one of the reasons why the French, ultimately backed by the United States, fought so fiercely to retain that island.
I mean, the life expectancy in Jamaica or Haiti, for example, was often between 3 and 7 years. So once you arrived on the island, you were worked to death on average between 3 and 7 years. I mean, it's genocide. And so that was what contributed, the type of torture. Because the white population was so much smaller than, say, on mainland America, vis-a-vis the black population, the paranoia was worse. And therefore the types of punishment, the types of torture, the extremity of the slave regime was much more severe in the Caribbean.
Taking pregnant women, crucify them, split their belly open enough so they will have a game. People are gonna bet who's gonna die first, the baby or the mother.
The reason why there was more rebellions in Jamaica and in the Caribbean in general is a number of factors. One, conditions were much worse. And I don't say that in any way to denigrate or downplay how brutal conditions were in America, but we can see this from the fact that the slavery was so bad in the Caribbean that the populations were not even able to reproduce themselves. So constantly new populations had to be brought from Africa.
And one of the things they used to do is bury us alive on an anthill, leaving your head so that you would slowly get tortured to death by ants eating your skull.
First of all, let's be clear, the rebellions against slavery started in Africa. And the rebellions against slavery in Africa are probably the most under-discussed and underrepresented element of the whole history. Everyone tells you that Africans collaborated, which is true. What they don't tell you about is those Africans that rebelled. And in fact, scholars estimate now, that it has been studied thoroughly, that the rebellions in Africa alone, of which there were hundreds, prevented perhaps 1 million people from crossing the Atlantic.
And one of the ways the planters kept control of Haiti was either to rape or have a child with a black woman, and then send that child to Europe to be educated, and then bring them back, and they became the overseers.
But all Africans that were enslaved understood that their natural state of being human was to be free in Africa. Those two things always went together.
In the Caribbean, because there was a concentration of sugar plantations, which was the most brutal form of slavery, worse than cotton or indigo or coffee or tobacco. It was the most labor intensive. And also the number of Africans versus the number of Europeans was much higher in the Caribbean. And then you have, of course, terrain. So island like Jamaica, island like Haiti, very mountainous, lend themselves to guerrilla warfare. Then you have strange political coincidences. So like during the years preceding the Haitian Revolution, there was a civil war in Africa in the Congo. So a lot of the Africans, Congolese, that ended up being Maroons in Haiti were African war veterans. They were militarily trained personnel back in Africa.
With the Haitian Revolution, there were 4 principal players in regards to the leadership of the Haitian Revolution. The first one was Mackandal.
Mackandal is considered to be the precursor to the 1791 beginning, because Mackandal was an enslaved African who worked at a plantation, and then he died in 1757 or 1758, but he freed himself. Right? Some people say that, you know, he had lost one arm in a sugar mill accident. But essentially, the legend of Mackandal is interesting because he foretold what would happen with regards to the Haitian Revolution.
He was this extraordinary herbalist. And what he did, he taught the people of Haiti, the Africans, how to use the herbs and fauna in the ecology that they're now in to poison the food of the white farmers. And he was very successful.
And so Mackandal went, took to the hills, and he would teach the kitchen people how to poison their masters.
They had nature on their side, and that's very important. They used nature as one of their greatest weapons. They knew the terrain, they understood the terrain, they understood botany, they understood toxicology, they understood poisons, they understood, and that's what Voodoo is. Voodoo is a science. Voodoo is not just a spiritual system.
The Bafioti means the black collaborators. They had to get them out of their face first. Mackandal, what he's really known, a lot of what he went after them first. Before he poisoned the European, he poisoned the black collaborators. Oh, they were all in the house Negroes, come on.
And one thing about Mackandal, he realized this. He understood that the black collaborators, we call them coons today, how they will sabotage black progress in order to get individual trinkets. So Mackandal, he saw that early on. So when it came to poisoning the white supremacists, Mackandal, he understood that we gotta get rid of these collaborators first. So he poisoned many of the black collaborators before he started to poison the white slave owners.
If you look at the statutes, the laws of a place like Georgia in the 1750s, contemporaneous with that revolt on Hispaniola, you'll find laws that are specifically seeking to restrain Africans from getting knowledge of plants because it was feared that they had in mind a plot or a conspiracy similar to what unfolded in what is now Haiti in the 1750s.
See, African people used strategies that they knew would work. Mackandal, another great revolutionary, he poisoned the French. And the women were the ones that poisoned them when they would prepare foods. He killed over 6,000 European Frenchmen.
When the enslaved Africans were finished with their work, he went down to talk to them. Like, he would always go down and talk to them. And at one night, he took out 3 handkerchiefs. A yellow handkerchief, a white handkerchief, and a black handkerchief. And he said to the audience, in terms of storytelling, because that's how we give information through stories. So he took out the first handkerchief, and he said to the enslaved Africans, first handkerchief was yellow. He says, these are the people that owned this island before Columbus came. And they were totally annihilated. Then he took out the white. He says, the white handkerchief, these are the folks that, annihilated the Tainos. And then he took out the black handkerchief, and this is the prophecy. He says, we, Africans, are going to avenge the Taino folks, and we're going to get these white folks out of Haiti.
And so Mackandal used his science, and I think he was a kind of pharmacologist in modern terms, but he used his science of understanding the natural world to begin to talk about how do we take that knowledge and free ourselves. And Mackandal, he's sort of the spark of the Haitian Revolution.
When you look at many of the people coming up out of this system, for instance, Mackandal. Mackandal was a preacher. And Mackandal was a preacher who told his people and the people around him that he had visions.